you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, great discussion. You know, not everybody decides that they want to move up in corrections. You know, maybe it's just not something that they want to do. Maybe, you know, for them, it's not their life. Yes, they have a good career, but in the end, they kind of want to stay on that front line. And today I want to discuss the value in that decision. Because some people may feel that you need to move up, but I disagree, because you can find value at any position within this profession. I have great people to share this dialogue with. I have two. One is Connie Alleyne, the author of The Cage was her cocoon. Thank God she was able to free up her busy schedule of signing all those books. Connie, always a pleasure.
It's so great to be here. So Connie Alleyne here, everyone. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. And I am enjoying not signing too many more books right now. It is definitely taken on a life of its own, and I love it. But you know, I think being able to do the stuff that we enjoy doing, which is having these conversations, like I need to have time for that. So like I'm ready for this discussion, because so many people, I think, get positioned for, you know, upward mobility, and they just don't really want it. And I think as a manager, you're like, how come you don't want to do this, you know? But like, you know, I think there's just this value of the front line, having those go-to people. So.
Yeah, I love what you just said too. It's true, the go-to people. And we also have author of Corruption Behind Bars and Inside the Inner Circle, and also a fellow influencer on YouTube as well, True Prison Stories, Gary York. And you notice real quick, I went a little extra on the information just now, the intro, because this is our second time doing the beginning, and I don't want them to be mad at me, so I'm upselling it. Gary, author of 2 books, YouTube channel. Hey, Gary, welcome aboard, man.
Hey, thank you for having me again. I love this topic. I have a lot of friends who did 20, 25, 30 years on the front line, and they were leaders. As Connie had said earlier today to us, they are informal leaders. They are the backbone of the agency. So I love this topic, and I think it's good that we have people that want to be on the front line and fight the fight for us.
Yeah, I love that, Gary. I agree, and we're definitely going to explore that, the people that want to remain on the front line and why that could be a benefit to the agency. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to discuss, some reasons why people may not want to move up. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we're back. So first off, real quick, and I'll go to Connie first on this. If you want to make an impact, now whatever that impact is, the impact is not dependent on the position you're in. It's dependent on the value that you have for what you do and the people that you are interacting with. For me, the value is my interactions with people, the investment that we have in each other, and if I'm able to leave anything meaningful behind during these interactions. Gary said Connie mentioned something about informal leader. So Connie, what exactly does that mean?
So I feel like those informal leaders are those go-to people. You know, I think a lot of times you got managers who don't want to acknowledge that those go-to people have a significant influence on the front line. You got people who seek them out for their advice, for their insight, who they go to them just, hey, I'm having this issue. You know, a lot of those go to people, they're very versed in the union contracts. They're very versed in policy and procedure. This is what the captain was supposed to do when they did whatever. You know, this is what the HSA is supposed to write, or this is what you should have been informed of. And I think those are the people who are building these really strong relationships with their brothers and their sisters. And people go to them because they trust their word, they trust their insight. Many times it could be just that they've got a lot of experience, or just that they've been around enough to see a lot happen. And people know, like, I've seen that person in action. They had this person's back, right? So there's different ways I think that they build this reputation, and they build like this social collateral, right? Where people really respect them. And you have some officers and some captains who may go to them as well, because I think, as Gary had mentioned, you know, you acknowledge that that person has some influence, right? Who cares if they don't have a title? They actually have some influence. And I agree, a good manager is going to leverage that influence that that person has, because they can still stay connected to the people in a way that managers simply can't.
And Gary, obviously I see you in agreement with that. What's your thoughts on what Connie was saying?
Oh, I agree 100% with what Connie said. You know, in my opinion, a smart sergeant, a smart lieutenant is going to see those informal leaders out there and use them to build a stronger network, a stronger shift, a stronger team. Okay. I know this officer is really great at cell extractions. So I'm going to use that officer to teach those cell extractions. I know this officer is really great at report writing. I want that officer to help so-and-so and so-and-so. What does that do? Well, teamwork. Everybody's working together to help each other, but it also helps the supervisor, because the supervisor has a lot of paperwork, as you know, a lot of phone calls to answer, a lot of other things to do. So why wouldn't you use those informal leaders on your shift and let them take the reins and teach the rookies, or help a seasoned officer even that has a new question that has arisen in their mind and they haven't ever come across this type of incident before. You know, none of us are perfect. None of us know everything. So that's what a lot of these informal leaders are there for. And I know a lot of people that did 20, 25, 30 years. Right now, I know people and have friends that retired and had no inkling or no desire to make rank. But the key thing here is that they didn't just slack off. That whole career, they helped other people to be successful with their career. And that's a big thing, because when you do that, you are a team player and you're into the game and you want to help, and you're happy right where you are at the front line.
Yeah, I noticed when I was on the front line, my interactions with people was more of, it was more detailed. You know, it was my investment in them. Whether it was the inmate population at that time or just each other, you know, working together, finding each other's strengths and really doing what you can to alleviate that, elevate that strength. I know, like for me, one of the things I was always good at is communication. And supervisors would always use me to communicate with the inmate population to try my best to de-escalate. I see that a lot now from a higher level, and how important it is to have that person that has that skill. And that usually is a frontline professional who has some experience dealing with those inmate, dealing with the inmate population, and even some cases dealing with their peers, you know, because it's just the culture, you know. So having that experience, having that level of expertise, supervisors will find themselves in many ways needing that and being able to lean on that. So I love that you guys stress the importance of not just, you know, how that interaction is with their peers, but more importantly, how they can strengthen or help the supervisor get the mission done. I mean, would you agree with that, Connie?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I feel like those are the people who really understand globally what's going on. Like, this is the reason why the supervisor is asking for whatever that thing is. And I feel like those are the people who have a way of reframing the situation so that the front line gets it. And, you know, I think they add that value because not only, so I don't think that managers are disconnected from the front line in the way that, you know, many frontline people think we're disconnected, right? However, I also feel that there's a way that when I'm on the front line, I can relate to others on the front line. And if someone's come to me with a situation, I could reframe it in a manner that the front line is going to be able to digest it and respond to it to get the result that the supervisor was looking for, that they may not have been able to articulate the same way in order to get the result. Because there's ways that I think our peers motivate us that a supervisor can't do.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely, I think maybe because managers, they're a little removed. So I think some people, even though you may have that manager or that supervisor that's connected to their people, don't get me wrong, they still have that level removed. You know, they're either 1 or 2 levels up. So sometimes the front line wants to relate to people that they feel are going through the same battle that they're doing. And when you have a good experienced officer or a good experienced staff member who's able to kind of find the positive within those battles, you know, to kind of keep things moving, management definitely needs that. We need someone that is very good on that front line to translate what we're trying to push down, but also what is coming up. So that middle person is great, especially if you're that frontline supervisor who you're looking to kind of foster that connection between frontline and maybe higher level management. It's always good to have that person that, you know, on that front line that really understands what's going on, but can explain it to a point where the translation is a little bit easier for management to, you know, either delegate or receive and pass forward. One of the things we mentioned, Gary, is that some people may not choose to move up because, yes, they're in a career. Don't get me wrong. And they know it's a career. They're going to ride it out 25, 30 years, whatever it is. But it's not their life. You know, they may not want the added responsibilities of moving up, and they're just comfortable within their own bubble, if you will. So Gary, do you believe that there are some people that, yes, it's a career. It's not saying that they're taking it any less serious. It's a career for them, but they're not looking for that added responsibility.
Well, and that's a good point. Let me preface that with, there are many people who never choose to go for promotion that are perfectly capable of getting a promotion, and they would make great supervisors, but they just like being in the trenches on the front line and working that job and helping others to succeed and survive and stay safe in that job. And what would we do if we didn't have them? That's a question. You know, we need people like that. You know, not everybody is cut out. I've heard people say, I got to be on the move. I've got to be all day moving and doing something. And I'm just not the type of person that wants to sit and do desk work reports. Well, that's fine, because you're needed. You're the backbone. You're the front line. We need people like that. So there is nothing wrong with somebody who says, I just don't have the want to become a supervisor. That's fine. We need you. We need you on that front line.
And, you know, if I may, sometimes as you move up, the biggest thing about moving up, in my mind, and what you have to transition, especially from frontline to first level supervisor, is the responsibility of other people, their work, you know, their failures, and kind of giving credit away also when they're successful. But the key here is the responsibility for other people. And sometimes that could be very unknown. You know, like I could have a job and I'm comfortable with me. I trust me. I know exactly what's expected from me. And, you know, life is easy, you know, no concerns. I'm doing what I can to kind of navigate my way through. But then when you become a supervisor, changes. Now you can get in trouble for the people that you oversee. So now that responsibility of that other person's work makes life a little bit unpredictable. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some levels of responsibility that we share as our brothers and sisters keeper, but as a supervisor, it's at a greater level. And trust and believe it's at a greater level. So if for the people that choose not to take that responsibility, I understand that, because life could be perfectly fine the way it is, rather predictable to the point where I'm getting my salary, I get to go home, no concerns. Why change it? Fair enough. I mean, Connie, would you agree that added responsibility adds a level of unpredictability?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think unpredictability is a nice way to put it. I think that, as you do move up, you kind of prepare for your life to not be your own, right? Like your time isn't your own. You don't get to necessarily pick and choose which battles you get involved in, right? Because if it falls on your lap, you're responsible for dealing with it, addressing it. If there is that fire, you need to put it out. There is no shifting that to someone else. And I think that the level of accountability, as well as the increased scrutiny that you sort of have to manage as you move up, is not necessarily something people are signing up for. It is an added level of stress to your life in general, right? So just think, if I'm already struggling to have a particular quality of life, or struggling to establish a work-life balance, certainly when you do step into these management roles, you lose the ability to control a lot of that. And so people like being on the front line, being able to come in, do my job. I mean, of course, I've heard many complain about the mandatory overtimes and being held and all that other stuff. But the reality is that managers don't necessarily have that flexibility of, once they go home, that work is done, right? Like, you go home and then your phone is still ringing, or you go home and you got multiple phone ringing, and you got an expectation to respond to emails, to still be present and connected, even though you're technically off the clock. You're like never off the clock. So, I mean, I completely get those people who want to kind of stay out of that mix. I mean, so our reality is we need chiefs and we need Indians, right? And I feel like we've got some really strong Indians that are out there making it happen every day. And then we've got chiefs who are doing their best to keep things in order. And it's not always smooth sailing, right? But that's what you kind of signed up to kind of own, that those days where it's not smooth sailing, that I don't get to clock out. Like, I'm still working until we get the things back on course.
And then I see Gary, again, just in agreement with what Connie's saying. I mean, what were some of the points that she said that hit home with you?
Well, Connie, what she just said made me think of this also. Let's just think of life. When she talked about reality, let's just think of life in general. There's some officers that are outstanding officers. They could be great supervisors, but they feel they would rather have that time at home with their family when they get off work. Because like she said, mandatory overtime, you don't have much time with your family. And now if you're a supervisor, you're getting all these phone calls at home. So they think the family is more important than promotion. There's others that I personally know that worked a full career at the jail or at the prison, but they also had a side job, their own business. And I don't know how it is up north, but you're allowed to have your own business and be a correctional officer here in Florida, as long as you inform human resources and your management. But so they want to do their job at work, but when they are off, they're tending to their side business. And, these are all reality things that happen with humans every day, no matter what job you do. So a lot of things that are going on in your personal life have a great impact on whether you want to go up the ladder or whether you want to just stay on the front line.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something, because Gary said, and I think it's spot on, is that, I want to spend time at home. In management, there is a sacrifice, and sometimes the family is not willing to make that sacrifice, because management, obviously there's lesser people in managers' positions. So when we're talking about frontline, maybe the lieutenant, really, even on the medical side, the RNs, I mean, there's less of them. So the likelihood of them getting mandatory more often is probably high. It's probably very likely. So, there has to be a sacrifice that's made when they step up into that next level, that next position, and maybe the family doesn't want it. Maybe the family, because again, you could have someone that has a lot of years in, it's got a nice bid, nice days off, maybe first shift, whatever it is, works with their family. Then they know that if they get promoted, what's going to happen? Their life goes upside down. They lose that seniority. They wind up going back down to whatever it is that doesn't work for them, like maybe a crappier ship for them, or no longer weekends off, whatever works for them. I mean, that's different. But again, they have a routine. I guess the key of this is that they have a routine that works with their life, but then when they move up, the routine's going to shift, and they may not be able to handle that shift. I mean, Connie, I'm sure you've dealt with that moving up. I mean, you get comfortable, and this is going to be great. I'm able to spend time with my family Saturday, Sunday, whatever works. All of a sudden, I get the management position on Monday, Tuesday, third shift.
Listen, I think the one thing with civilian employees is that we don't get mandated to another shift, right? But I think as you move up, so as an administrator, what would I be worth if I never saw my third shift, right? Like if I never saw my second shift, like you're responsible for every shift. And so even though you could work your Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, what good does it do you if you've never met your weekend staff because you only work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? You only work covering one shift. So, I've moved up. I've come in 6 to 2. I've come in on a Saturday or Sunday. I've come in, random hours, not because I'm spot checking, because I would usually give a heads up. Hey, I'll be there, tonight at whatever time, because you want to get to know your staff. But when you are on the front line and that's not an obligation, you work your shift and that's just it, right? So I think when you mentioned the unpredictability of things, I mean, yeah, you may be able to control what days you're going to go in on what off shifts. But when there's an emergency, you are required to be present and available. You are required to be responsive. I always remember myself, and I laugh. We were in the midst of Hurricane Sandy. There was only essential employees supposed to be on the road. Here I am driving, 50 miles away from home to get to the facility because we were evacuating one of the facilities. And then later on in the evening, when I finally get home, I'm looking at the news coverage and they're showing this one car driving down in the rain, and it was my car. And I was like, oh my God, how awful is this? Like, you're the one maniac that's going down, but I couldn't tell my warden, oh, I can't come in, right? Like, oh, it's raining too hard. No, yeah, it's a hurricane and we are evacuating a unit. And on top of that, we've got to coordinate mental health, medical, meds, whatever has to get going. And so it's kind of one of those, once you decide that you are moving up, especially in this environment, you have to be prepared to be called upon in your role at whatever time of the day or night that it happens. That's just a reality.
And I love what you mentioned, guys. So my mindset's always stuck on 24-hour operations, custody, food service, areas that have to be medical, areas that have to be functioning 24 hours. But you're right. You do have those that maybe strictly Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But when you start crossing at those higher levels, you are going to be getting those emails after 5 and possibly Saturday and Sunday because the facility is still moving, and there may be still things that, can't wait to get done. And as a department head or as a manager for that department, even if you're only scheduled Monday through Friday, you could be getting those phone calls or that because they may need something like a release that requires some level of paperwork, like a last minute release that, was decided Friday afternoon. And now you're scrambling Friday night and a Saturday morning because this inmate has to go and you got to get that paperwork ready. Make sure that there's no detainers. Make sure they got everything that's needed so the inmate can transition. So, yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on all ends. But I think the key here is that once you start crossing over into those higher levels, that responsibility can start affecting your daily routine with your family. One of the things I noticed, maybe Gary could talk on this too, was I noticed that, yeah, there were some people that really wanted the promotion. They're all happy they got their promotion, and that's great. But I've seen people just as happy who've worked many years and they finally got weekends off first shift because that was just their goal. Very simple. It's what they wanted. And next thing you know, it's like you're happy that, you got promoted, but this person has the same level of happiness because, after, let's say, 13 or 14 years, they finally landed a spot maybe on first shift, and now they're pushing their way closer to the weekends. What's your thoughts on that? Have you ever seen anybody happy because maybe they landed on first shift and bonus, maybe a piece of the weekend off?
Oh, yeah. You hear that all the time. You say, hey, I've been doing this for so long, and now I'm off every Friday and Saturday permanently, or I'm off every Saturday, Sunday, or every Sunday, Monday. I'm in heaven now. I'm going to finish out my last 5 of my 25, and I'm going to have these weekends off. I mean, if you're not going for promotion, some of these things are very attractive to get the weekend off, and they deserve it. There's other new folks coming in, rookies coming in, and they have to go through the trials and tribulations that our older officers did. And it's only fair that if you put in the time and you're an informal leader and you're a team player, you deserve to get better days off. You deserve maybe to get a better position. That's another thing. Why does he or she get to work that post? And then you look at this 2-year person, you say, because they've been here 20 years. How long have you been here? And they just kind of get quiet. Maybe when you get 20 years in, that's going to be your post for your last 5 years. Everybody wants the good stuff right up front, but you can't. You have to earn it. You have to earn your way up in this field.
And guys, I want to mention, we touched on this at the beginning too, real quick, is that even as a frontline professional in corrections, it's still a demanding position. That's why Connie and Gary both mentioned the mandatory side. I mean, there's still levels of responsibility that could have an impact on the life that you're planning on having with your family, because at any time you could be mandatory. We have a lot of facilities that are understaffed, so obviously these poor officers or whoever's being affected by this is just being recycled almost every day, 4 or 5 days a week, doing 16-hour shifts. So there's already a demand as it is. So adding to that extra level really does have a further impact. But I think even before I entered this profession, my family knew that this is not just going to be a career that stays at the job. This is going to be a career that is going to have an impact, because right off the bat, they say, hey, you want to take this job? Say goodbye to weekends and holidays. That was the first thing they said when I got into corrections, and they tell you that right at the get-go. Don't expect weekends for like 10 years. Don't expect first shift for 15, 20 years. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people get lucky and they are able to maneuver, and they do. They could get weekend. I mean, but for the most part, first shift is the ideal shift. Not for everyone, but for most. That seems to be the harder shift to get. And probably the weekends, because most people want Saturday, Sunday, again, because that fits their lifestyle. That seems to be the hardest to get. So you probably don't touch those until you have at least 15, 20 years in. But again, there are some people that have gotten it sooner. Plus, you have a lot of facilities now that are not doing what they can to maintain good senior staff. So you do have a lot of senior staff that are just kind of fed up and walking off. So you may have some people that are newer in the profession with those good days. But again, it's not really, the real route of it all was literally, it took years to earn that position. Like Gary said, it took years to touch a Friday on first shift, to touch a Saturday, to touch a Sunday. But I think the key here, and what we were discussing really, is that maybe some people, and I think this kind of sums it up, is that some people choose that this is a career, but it's not going to be my life. I mean, that's the key. I think when you start crossing into that managerial position, that supervisory position, that level of responsibility for others makes it's an investment. It really is. It's an investment. You're being responsible for people's actions, and then there's kind of that higher level sacrifice. So I think if we could sum up this discussion, I think the big point of it is that, what am I willing to give to this profession but in the process of me giving to this profession, what am I taking away from my family? I mean, would you agree with that, Connie?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it is a big decision. I think for me, when I first got into profession, I wasn't married, I didn't have children, so it wasn't like a thing, right? But like, 10 years into the profession, I have a daughter, right? And so it kind of shifts. So it's not to say that life is not going to change and you're not going to have to make some adjustments, because if this is a career for you, then, you're going to have to figure it out, but for people who you go into it and you already have your family, right? You're already sort of aware of this decision is going to impact other people. I would just say, choose wisely, really consider the option and how, your family will be impacted. Because, I mean, I think on one of Will's shows, he may have talked about, how the divorce rate is for folks in corrections, right? Because the job is very demanding. And I think that's something that we have to be real with ourselves about. And hopefully our loved ones, our spouses understand the sacrifice that we're making when we go in on those off hours and when we do miss holidays and birthdays and recitals and all those other things, which I feel that there are a lot of people who don't want that. And I think as a manager, I have to respect that you've decided that this thing is a priority for you or it's not. So like work is a priority, but moving up isn't necessarily a priority, because I don't want to miss out on what's going on in my home life. I don't want to miss out on that baseball game, or I don't want to, we pick and choose. And I think that we need to have these kind of honest discussions. Like whoever said to you, Gange, like, okay, be prepared to miss out on holidays and weekends, right? Like that's something for you to walk through the door understanding that I'm not going to get a Monday through Friday, right? So like when you don't get it, you're not resentful about the job, right? It's just, I walked in knowing that this was something. So I think when we have these discussions, it really opens the door to folks who may not be clear that, you know what, the promotional opportunity is a wonderful thing, but you have to weigh what you're going to be sacrificing once you step into the role.
I want to add on that actually, because, okay, so 8 years for me to become a sergeant for maybe about 3 years. And then I crossed in administration and been in a superintendent position now for, I'm probably completing 6 years, working on my 7th. And that's pretty much the longest I think people kind of in these positions, because usually once you start crossing the administrative level, positions move a little bit quicker. People are closer to the end of their career, they retire quicker, whatever the case may be. So when people have asked me, hey, Gange, why haven't you made the effort to move up? Because this may be the first time I'm really actually making the effort, is because I find myself, and I do want to move up, but my answer is because I'm at a facility that's very close to my house, and I got 2 young girls. So, that's my answer. And by the way, the facility I work at is very, very busy. It's a very, very busy facility, but it's only 30 minutes from my home. So I'm willing to sacrifice, believe it or not, the calls or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, if things work out good, I have the chance to be home by 4:15, as opposed to working at a facility that's an hour and a half away. Sure, it may be a little bit, less activity. I may be able to put my feet up a little bit to some extent. Don't take that the wrong way, but hear what I'm saying. It's still an hour and a half from my house. So it's really about the quality of time that I'm getting, because an hour and a half a day takes away how much a week from your family, and by the way, that's an hour and a half going to work and an hour and a half leaving work. So that's 3 hours a day, when right now I can embrace the 2 hours extra that I have, 20 to 30 minutes there, 20 to 30 minutes back. It's only an hour there, an hour back. That's 2 hours a day extra I get to have with my family. So I agree with you 100%. I kind of got to this position and froze myself because I actually found a greater priority, which is, I could always move up. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not a regret for me, because the choice I made was, okay, so maybe I never made administrator, but guess what? I was at my daughter's graduation. Guess what? I've been at all her birthday parties. So I will never look back and be mad at myself because I didn't reach that high position because my priorities shifted. And now it's more about the moments I have with my family, because I know one day they're going to be doing their own thing. And then I'm be looking back at my life wondering, man, how many moments did I miss? You know, and here's the key. This is what gets to me. How many moments did I miss that I chose to miss? So when you're at the front line and you're getting stuck, I understand that. Don't kill yourself for that. I understand that that's not the choices that you've made. But as you start to move up, part of you moving up is making that choice, that sacrifice. And you're going to ask yourself, you know what? Was it worth it? Was the ambition to go to the top worth not doing these events when I could have done it? And some people will say, you know what? At the end, I'm okay with not becoming that administrator. I'm okay with not becoming that director or becoming that commissioner, because here's a picture of me with my daughter when, you know, she graduated high school. Here's me teaching her how to drive. And to me, that will balance any ambition. What's your thoughts on that, Gary?
No, I agree with you 100%. Good example. A deputy came to me and she said, I really want to put in for the sergeant's exam, but I have a young daughter and I help her with her homework. And if I get sergeant, she didn't say she would, but if I get sergeant, I'll be on the night shift, because over here, if you make new sergeant, you're going straight to night shift to start out your career. So she knew she would be on nights. So I told her, weigh all the pros and cons and do what's best for you. You know, I'm not going to tell her which way to go. And I watched her, and it was 3 or 4 years later, she took the sergeant's exam. She let her daughter get a little older. Maybe things changed in her household. She's a sergeant now. So see, the time wasn't right. It fits in with what we're saying here. The time wasn't right. So she waited till the time was right for her family and for her.
And guys, that's a great thing, because in the end, this is a career and you have time. You have time to hopefully have that life you want and then revisit choices if it's there. But if it's not there because maybe there just wasn't the time, because sometimes that could happen. Sometimes you could have kids later in life, you know, like I did. I had kids when I was in my 30s, and I only have 6 years left before I get to retire, you know. But with that said, how I'm going to balance that is the pictures I have with my family. That to me has become my greater ambition in life. And for the supervisors, I mean, there are going to be some supervisors that have to move up because they are doing it for their family. Don't get me wrong, because they need that extra money. They need to make sure that their family's successful. But hopefully that's a family that understands it. And that's not a regret either, because then even though you may not be in the picture, you know, who paid for the gown that your daughter's wearing? You know, there's other ways that you're there providing that support, you know, so I'm not minimizing that either. I'm just saying when you have that valid choice, you know, knowing that if I move up, these are the sacrifices I have to make, you know, or if I don't move up, this could be the benefit. So again, I may be at this level now, but I've kind of stopped myself a little bit because I'm closer to home, but I may go out for something now because I feel that we got a routine going, things are starting to work. But in the end, guys, it's a very, very tough choice. But I figure we covered a lot of reasons why people may not choose to move up. I would love to get your thoughts in the comments. Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say we thank you, the informal leader who is helping us make things happen, who is giving the pep talks that we don't see, who is helping people to stay focused and stay on task, who is preventing your brother and sister from doing something foolish. We appreciate it, because those are fires that ultimately we don't have to put out. Those are jobs that are secure because of the insights that you shared and the direction that you've given. So I appreciate you, and I hope that you continue on. And if you ever do choose to step into a formal leadership position, you know, I think you will do great at it because you've had so much practice doing it informally.
That's powerful. Again, a shirt that Connie's never going to make. It is what it is, Connie. You know it. Laugh it up. But I just want to piggyback on something Connie said before we go to Gary. Is it's about the value that you have in what you're doing, and sometimes, even as a good supervisor, I may not be able to show you that. You have to discover that on your own. And again, it could just come with the interactions you have with one individual. I've seen a lot of officers retire, and then when they retire, they look back and they say, you know, Gangi, even though I never moved up, they got a lot of success stories that they can share. And it's based on the individual interactions that had value to not just the individual that they were talking to, but they found value in themselves in doing it. So again, I love Connie, what she's saying. Formal leader, it doesn't matter the position. Your impact is what you make of it. Makes, you know, it really is. I love that. Hey, Gary, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to say, always do what your heart tells you to do. Weigh all the pros and cons and do what's right for you. And never worry about what other people think. Because if you worry about what other people think going through your career, you're just going to have the wrong thoughts. Do what you want to do and have a good career. And whether you choose to stay on the front line or choose to be promoted, we're all in this together. Don't let anybody give you the boo game.
I love that. Maybe we'll have a discussion one day about why managers or leaders become leaders, you know, why people decide to move up. Hopefully we're able to generate a discussion that is informative, positive. But in the end, guys, I think the dialogue here is just a reminder that it doesn't matter what your position is. You know, I mean, for Gary to bring up before and with Connie too is the informal leader. I love it because that means that no matter how far we move up, we always look back to see, you know, that how needed those people are on the front line, how much they hold things together. So if anything, take this dialogue as a reminder of your purpose and your importance in this profession. So if you have a chance to reevaluate what you do, even if you wanted to get promoted and you just can't seize the opportunity for whatever reason, know for a fact it's not the position that makes you important. It's what you do right now, where you're at, and how much you believe in what you do and the value that you give off to others. Skill, passion, meaningful contribution. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.